This is question 2 from section 1 of the 2004 BMAT, and this question asks which of the options, if true, would most strengthen the argument. So let's have a look at the argument. It says, firstly, nutritionists say we should eat more fruit and vegetables and less fat to help avoid serious illnesses. So this is reporting what other people say, but because they're scientific experts, I think we're meant to take it that what they're saying is true, so this is just reporting what will help us avoid illness. 2 says that since fruit and vegetables are more expensive than fatty foods, low-income families are unlikely to follow the advice. So that's the writer's opinion on what they think will happen. Then they say to improve the nation's health, the government will have to consider a tax on fatty foods. So they're saying what's necessary, that's also an opinion. And we need to know what the conclusion is to know what would strengthen the argument for it. But it's going to be one of these two, and it seems like this would be a reason for this. So the fact that low-income families are unlikely to follow the advice if nothing else changes means there's a reason to consider making a change, i.e. to tax fatty foods. So it seems this is the conclusion. Why should we tax fatty foods specifically? Well, as in why a tax? Well, the idea is what matters is the difference in price. So fruit and vegetables are more expensive than fatty foods. If we put a tax on fatty foods, it would make the fatty foods more expensive. Then there wouldn't be so much of a difference, and this effect would be reduced. So they're saying that we do need to encourage people to eat more fruit and veg, but fatty food being cheaper means poorer families won't eat it, and so we have to tax the fatty foods to make them more expensive. So let's look at the options for what could strengthen this. It's worth noting that this is kind of a solution, proposing a solution to a problem. So taxing fatty foods is a solution to the problem of them being cheaper than fruit and vegetables. So something that would strengthen this might be something that shows the problem is worse or makes it more likely the conclusion will, that the solution will actually work. So actually only one of these options, it says most strengthen, but only one of these would plausibly strengthen this at all. Can you see which one it is? Well, I'm going to say it's C. Why is that? It's saying smoking reduced when prices of cigarettes and tobacco rose. Firstly, why is that relevant? Well, we know this is talking about making something more expensive to encourage people to choose it less. And C saying when something else became more expensive, people chose it less. So that's a case of a similar thing working, so that makes it more likely this will work. So this does seem to strengthen the argument, but it could have been there was something that strengthened it more. That's not the case in this particular question. In fact, most of these options actually weaken the argument. Can you see which ones? Well, actually, A, B, and D all would weaken the argument. Let's look at why. A says many people prefer fatty foods to fruit and veg. So why would this weaken the argument? Well, it's suggesting there's something other than just the price that's important, which is people just prefer fatty foods. And that would make making them more expensive less effective because there's other reasons people choose them. B says advertisers focus on selling fatty foods. So that's similar in providing another reason people might pick them, and also it's providing a reason this change might not make a difference because maybe advertisers would continue selling them or focusing on them, and that would encourage people to continue to buy them. That might not happen, but it also might for all we know. And D says it's hard to persuade children that eating less fat is healthier. Again, that provides a reason the proposed solution might not work because even if the foods become more expensive, it's hard to persuade children to eat anything else. So these would all weaken the argument instead of strengthening it. And then finally, why is E incorrect? E says governments usually make decisions based on short-term results. So this is talking about how governments usually act. Why doesn't that matter here? Because we might think, well, okay, the government's not going to carry out the plan properly, so the solution won't work. But the point is, this is talking about what the government should do, or should think about doing. And what they actually do isn't relevant to what they should do. So we can just mark this as irrelevant, and so the answer is C.